Here's Brody Brazil.
So I came across this very interesting video here on YouTube. Didn't have a ton of views, didn't seem to generate a lot of buzz or hype. But if you watch how this interview plays out, this conversation is very fascinating. It's all about the Tampa Bay Rays and their encounters with the city of St. Petersburg. This is WMNF radio. It's public radio in Tampa. And they're interviewing Richie Floyd, who is a city council member in St. Petersburg. And there's just a lot to get to here about what happened, what didn't happen between the team and the city and Tropicana Field, and now in the present and future moving forward. How does this play out? What happens? What doesn't happen? I'll let the interview start here. I'll pause it at different points to interject some background or opinion or insights, but this is WMNF Radio.
And joining us to talk about this is a critic of that deal, St. Petersburg City Council member Richie Floyd. Welcome back to WMNF's Tuesday Cafe, Councilmember Floyd.
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad you could join us to give us an update. So you voted against the agreement to build a new stadium for the Rays and redevelop the historic gas plant district. So remind people what that deal included and why you opposed it at the time.
Yeah, so the deal was to subsidize the Rays building a new stadium between the city and the county. It was about $600 million in cash. If you add debt subsidy, we're pushing $1 billion.
That's another part about all this. We can do the math to $600 million, but all the other benefits and the total kind of walk-away benefit from the city and county was closer to $1 billion. Just keep that in mind.
Worth of subsidy, and sell them the land that Tropicana Field's on and its parking lots are on for significantly under market value.
That's also another factor here of something the Rays would have benefited from, but even they walked away from this.
And in exchange, we were going to get 30 years of baseball played in St. Petersburg, as well as a bunch of community benefits that were relatively good. But, you know, when you added it all up, the subsidy, the land subsidy, and the benefits we were getting back to the community and the tax dollars received, we were in a significant hole. The city itself was $250 million in the red based off of what we were going to receive versus what we were going to output in just cash subsidy alone.
Wow.
And, you know, between that and just having a disagreement with subsidizing a private corporation to the tune of $1 billion in public money, I couldn't support the agreement as it was written.
So despite your opposition and the opposition of a few other elected officials, the deal did go through.
Went through in the city and the county, by the way.
But then there was the surprising developments over the last months that the Rays kind of just decided that they would break the deal. They had their reasons, which we'll talk about, of course. But here are some of the words that the Tampa Bay Times described how residents felt after the team ripped up the deal last week. They said they felt angry, bewildered, and stunned. Were you stunned or angry that the Rays broke this deal?
I wasn't stunned. They had been sending smoke signals for months. I mean, in an October council meeting, they literally said the deal is dead. And so I wasn't stunned.
And in fairness, the Rays kind of widely hinted at this, like, we're not sure about this anymore. We don't know if we can do this alone anymore. We're not sure if we're in. And then obviously they've since said they're out, but they have not yet. Actually, to my understanding, they've not submitted the letter of officially backing out of this deal yet.
Angry. I would describe myself as frustrated for a few reasons. But the biggest point of frustration for me is that we at City Hall and city staff and the Rays themselves as well spent 2 years and millions of dollars negotiating this agreement. I pulled multiple all-nighters to read legal documents. And at a time when we're trying to recover from a hurricane, and they wasted our time. And it was rude to say the least. And it was not a good look for someone who wants a large investment from the city.
And that's one thing I've made a point of all along is to say, well, these two sides, I mean, they've been working diligently and very hard together and spending a lot of time and effort and money together. There was so much human power exerted here to get this deal so close and to get the city and the county signed on that the team's deal is the one that they're the ones who ended their own deal, basically.
And there was a little surprise as well in that this was the largest stadium subsidy in MLB history that they turned down. I have no idea where they think they're going to get more money than this, but it was twice the size of the next biggest subsidy that's ever actually taken place.
That's a big, bold statement right there. And I mean, I assume that's true. And if true, that's summarized. That's the headline of all of this, to be quite honest.
And some of the reasons that the Rays said that they killed this deal is that there was this the hurricane, of course, came through, ripped the roof off of Tropicana Field. And then according to the Tampa Bay Times, they said that after the Rays decided to play this season in Tampa, Pinellas County commissioners delayed financing, but the county commission kind of says that nothing was delayed. There was one vote that was delayed, but they didn't break any part of the contract. So what are your thoughts about who the bad faith actors were in breaking the deal?
So the county commission delayed after, what I feel should be excusable, a historic hurricane season, back-to-back hit, and delayed for 7 weeks. But the thing is that the agreement did not require them to approve the bonds for months and months after that. They were so far ahead of any deadline that I don't think it's even notable. So the Rays giving that reasoning as to why they backed out, like a 7-week delay is going to cause that many problems. It had been 20 years that we've been talking about a stadium and they're going to throw it in the trash for 7 weeks. I don't know what to make of that.
Also, another really good point. And if there was some kind of huge incurred cost, can we see the math? Can we see the math on the maybe $150 million the team said it was going to cost them extra for this project? Maybe more, but if we can see it, maybe we can believe it. Until we can see it, it's hard to actually fully trust.
Irrespective of baseball, whether baseball's played in the Trop or not, the city, I think, still has some obligations to make repairs on Tropicana Field. Tell us what you know about that, what kinds of repairs, and what the cost might be.
And this is really interesting because, as we know, like the Rays are fully expecting at this point Tropicana Field to be fixed and done by the start of 2026. It's like a year-long process to fix up all the problems and issues they have right now. It's a year-long process and like $50 to $60 million to do so.
Yeah, so the roof blew off Tropicana Field, as I'm sure most people know, and water got in there. It's not meant to have water in it. It doesn't have drainage. The seats in the field are not waterproof.
Correct. You cannot just play baseball games. There are like a lot of comments I see, oh, just play without the roof. It can't be done. The building is one giant bucket, and it just collects water now with no place to drain it out.
And so we need to put a new roof on it, and we need to repair the things that got damaged by the rain hitting them. And the issue is that we owe them 3 more years of baseball there. There's 3 years left on our 30-year agreement with them. And so we're sort of in a bind that where we owe them an MLB quality stadium for 3 years. Even though this stadium is basically condemned to a fate of being torn down, we have to give them a stadium for the next 3 years. And so it's an expensive proposition for such a short amount of time. My preference would be for us to come to some sort of settlement or agreement with them that says we're not going to do something that's so obviously wasteful, like rebuild a stadium that's going to be torn down 3 years after it gets finished being used.
Even though the Rays have kind of put this pressure and expectation on St. Pete, like, oh, you're going to do this now. We look forward to this.
But we have to have those negotiations out in the open and see what's a better deal for the city. And you'll see we're going to have some of that discussion next Thursday at the city council meeting.
Coming up soon.
Do you have an idea of what it might cost if there is no settlement, if the city just has to go ahead and put the new roof on, et cetera?
We're guessing a little north of $50 million. But the good news is, I guess I say good news, the silver lining is that the building does have insurance and FEMA does cover things that insurance doesn't cover. So the city out of pocket, I'm expecting, and this is very speculative, so have that caveat. I'm expecting maybe $20 million, hopefully south of that, out of the city's pocket to rebuild the stadium.
Which 20 compared to 60 is quite the deal, right? But we're still talking about $20 million for 3 years of public money towards, to his point, a stadium that doesn't really have a long-term future as of right now. And by the way, there was even more insurance on Tropicana Field. That coverage was recently scaled back. I mean, within a year before Hurricane Milton ripped the roof off, it was scaled back. It would have, from my understanding, it would have covered most of the damage had the coverage not been reduced. But because it was, now they need to get, FEMA and everybody else involved. And again, the process of getting all of this approved now and getting the work started, is this going to happen within the next month or two? Because if it's not, there's no way it seems like opening day 2026 is going to happen at the Trop.
So that brings us to an idea that has kind of surfaced since the deal broke. The Times is reporting that the Rays owners are floating the idea of upgrading Tropicana Field and having St. Pete and Pinellas each chip in possibly $200 million and extending the lease and them staying at the Trop for 10 years.
This was reported in the Tampa Bay Times that the team, the Rays, and the city and the county would each be responsible for $200 million for Tropicana Field. So $600 million of upgrades, whatever that does to the Trop to make it better. And then the team would stay 10 to 15 years longer on their deal as part of that.
Have you heard those things as a member of city council? Have you heard anything about that? And can you give any more detail on any of those numbers and whether you think that that might be an option?
Yeah, so I've heard about it, and what I can do for you is put those numbers into context. So just looking at the stadium alone, the stadium part of the deal that they killed alone, it was $600 million with about an even split, a little more from the county, $600 million going to the stadium to get us 30 years of baseball. Now what they're proposing is $400 million between the city and the county to get us 10 years of baseball. On its face, it's a worse deal than they just turned down.
That's not untrue. I mean, if you do that math and you look at it that way through that lens, the assurance of baseball is a lot shorter and the cost is not that much less for the city and the county.
And so to start negotiating from that point, and on top of that, we just went through years of working with them for them to, at the last second, change their mind. For us to negotiate with them again is going to be very difficult. I mean, this current ownership group has proven themselves untrustworthy, and the deal that they're offering us now is worse than the deal that they reneged on before. So I would not hold my breath for that to come to fruition.
There you
Our
go.
guest is Richie Floyd, St. Pete City Council member, and we're talking about the Tampa Bay Rays and where they might play in the future and what role St. Pete and other governments might have. As you might remember, Richie Floyd voted against the stadium deal last year. And so maybe it's not a big surprise that you're hearing that some animosity or some trepidation perhaps of continuing to negotiate with the Rays. But here's something that might be, a little bit surprising compared to last year is the Tampa Bay Times is reporting that St. Petersburg Mayor Ken Welch made it clear that he no longer wants to be in business with Rays owner Stuart Sternberg. That would be a change because Ken Welch was one of the biggest fans, I guess, of this deal that happened between the Rays and Pinellas County and St. Petersburg.
That's true. Things changed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the truth is that, he was the one who selected them as the developer, and he was the one who, led all of this charge to keep baseball in St. Petersburg. And it was his community benefits agreement that he was very passionate about. And, we disagreed. I saw where he was coming from, but I disagreed significantly on the, subsidizing of a major corporation like that. But to hear him now say he's not interested is not a surprise either. It's like I mentioned before, it was a tremendous amount of work to get the agreement to the point that we did.
Right.
And, whether you agreed with it or not, I still had to spend a lot of work on it to make sure that I was doing everything I can to influence how the outcome happened. And so the city staff members, the mayor's office spent so much time on it, only for it to be killed at the last second by someone who had been all in until we got hit by hurricanes, at least publicly. it's very difficult for anyone, I think, to rekindle the amount of trust, the amount of work it takes to create an agreement like this, the things in the city that get ignored while you're trying to create an agreement like this. We can't go through that again with someone that we can't trust. And so I see why the mayor would come at it from that angle.
I mean, there are so many just great points and perspectives here from City Council Member Floyd. And you can really see what probably everybody else on the council saw. They voted the deal through because they wanted it to happen. They wanted the team to be there. They wanted it to stay, and they thought it was well enough. Richie obviously never thought it was a great idea. He always voted against it, but interesting to see this inside view and perspective on the situation.
So that brings us to the question about whether the city might have an appetite for a similar type of deal with the Rays, if that could be resurrected if there's new ownership.
Very, very interesting.
So we'll have to start over, I think, with new ownership. It won't just be as simple as saying, like, dusting off the papers and saying, here's your new agreement. Like, times have changed a little bit. Costs have changed. Which
might be why the Rays backed out. Times have changed, costs have changed. And in the year or two since they proposed it, maybe they looked at it again and said, we're not capable of this anymore.
And city council's changed. We have 2 different council members than we did whenever we passed the original agreement. So I don't know what that means, but I know that if there was a new ownership that was interested, I've heard the mayor say things like he'd be interested in talking to them. I'm sure anyone would be interested in talking to them, but I can't predict what that outcome would be like at this moment. A lot of things have changed.
So it looks like in the immediate future, there's not going to be construction on a new baseball stadium at the site of the Tropicana Field, but there was all sorts of other development that was planned for that area under the deal that the Rays just broke.
Right.
So could St. Petersburg, independent of the team, develop areas like the parking lots that are near the Tropicana Field?
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point. Right now, we would have to wait until the lease agreement ends with the Rays. Otherwise, they get 50% of the proceeds until that lease agreement ends. So I think what you'll see is us find a way to end the lease agreement, be it through repairing Tropicana Field and providing them with a stadium for 3 more years, or negotiating some sort of settlement with them. That's what you'll see happen in the short term. And then in the long term, I think you bring up a really good point. There was a lot of things included in this agreement that were not about baseball. And my point the entire time when pushing back against subsidizing the baseball stadium was that we would be able to afford so much more if we did not have to spend $500 million of city money on a stadium over the next 30 years. And now we're in that position. We're going to be able to develop this piece of land and provide so much more community benefits, so many more high quality public goods and services. We're talking like rec centers, parks, social housing, environmental upgrades around Booker Creek. There are so many things, museums, jobs. There are so many things that are going to have so much more financing if we're not subsidizing a baseball stadium that really, I think everyone in the city recognizes. While it does hurt to be in this position with the Rays, even if you didn't support the deal, you still know that like the city and the future of the area around Tropicana Field, our future is bright here, and it's going to be really good, and we're going to be able to get a lot done. We're an attractive place to be, and we're going to be able to invest in the things that make us attractive.
Well, we're going to have to leave it on that note because we're out of time, but I want to thank you very much for coming on Tuesday Cafe today, Councilmember Floyd.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Look, I thought that was a compelling interview. So many details, perspectives, what happens next, how does this all go? And I think it's also kind of rewarding that we've been talking about a lot of these things that were in that conversation all along. So, we've kind of read between the lines to see what wasn't being said. Now it is being said, and it confirms kind of what we thought all along. So this is an unfortunate situation. There's no easy answers. There's no easy outs in terms of staying in St. Pete, working out something new in Tampa. I mean, that's totally separate from all of this. I hope the team can just stay in the area, and I don't know what comes next. There's no playbook for this. There's no guidelines for this. There's no orderly procedure of how this is supposed to go. We don't know what happens next. But obviously, we're going to find out pretty soon. It was mentioned there that city council meeting in the next handful of days, which will determine the fate of moving forward on Tropicana Field or not. If at least that happens and the team is interested in staying there and the city really is going to fund this, then at least we know for the short term where the Rays are going to play. But if it gets into a buyout and a potential break of that contract, I mean, everything is so much in a blender right now, so we'll see where this goes. Hey, that's the end of this video. Really appreciate you for sticking around. Thumbs up down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so I can definitely see you back here next time.